Could we imagine that after 12 months, they can have already a sustainable supply chain in place?
Yes, definitely yes, after 12 months. This is the reason when I say that Vietnam is the best bank for the bank. Easiest is to do here at the moment.
Are you a large-scale SME or an MNC and you are looking to outsource manufacturing in Vietnam? This video is for you. In today's video, we're going to go through the process that you have to follow if you want to start outsourcing manufacturing outside of your main market. Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. I'm Guillaume from Move to Asia, and in this video, we're going to discuss about outsource manufacturing. I have with me Pietro. Pietro brings years of experience into that industry. Pietro, can you start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. Hello, Guillaume. Nice to be here again. So my name is Pietro Karjalainen, and I have been here in Vietnam since 2009, both in market entry, but especially in the manufacturing sector. We have been doing here, I would say, over 100 assignments already related to manufacturing and finding new suppliers.
Thank you, Pietro. First question for you, why it makes sense for SMEs or large corporations to starting outsource manufacturing overseas?
Well, Guillaume, there are diverse reasons for that, but I could take maybe three main reasons which we hear from our customers who are coming here and willing to outsource in Vietnam. There is the latest tariff implication is certainly one important thing. Vietnam is having lower tariffs, but tariffs, yes, geopolitical issues. People are willing to diversify their supply chains in Vietnam, for example. And then there is the cost-effective environment. So at the moment, I would say that Vietnam is the best bang for the buck, which means that comparing to the production and overall costs in Vietnam, it's the easiest place possibly to do and to manufacture nowadays.
Let's say you choose Vietnam and you believe that Vietnam is the right place for you. Do you have any magic trick, or is it easy to get started and to start outsourcing manufacturing here in Vietnam?
There is no magic tricks. It's hard work. Unfortunately, people often believe that Vietnam is like China. And that is absolutely not the case. There is a different business culture. It's way more difficult to develop your supply chains in Vietnam if you are not present here. That is one of the things. It doesn't mean that you have to be personally present here, but you have to work here first to do it, and then somebody can be present for you. It is also important to understand that Vietnam business culture is such that the companies are very loyal to their customers on a longer term. They are difficult to reach in the beginning because they are afraid of foreign companies in many cases. The trust is not yet in the place, but we are helping our customers to create that trust between them and suppliers. Once the suppliers are in place, they are looking for long-term customer relationships. It's more about partnerships. They are not seeing it so much as supplier and buyer function, or like a partnership where both are gaining something. And in the Vietnamese side, the gains are learning new things, learning new methods, learning new products, maybe new technologies and things like that. And for that, they are practically sacrificing quite a lot many times. But this is the main difference which I see here.
Thank you, Pietro. So basically what you are saying is that selection process at the beginning to identify and to vet potential suppliers is not something that you can easily copy-paste from China. Can you give more information about that?
Yeah, there is a huge difference in the matter of fact. So if we think a case example, China, which is a more advanced country in manufacturing also than Vietnam, if you solicit from them quotations by email or by calling them and so on, you very easily get hold of the factories and they are very actively quoting your products. You do the same in Vietnam. You can send 10 emails, 100 emails to different factories here. Nobody is going to answer for you. There is a reason for that, because they are so much solicited that they don't have simply the capacity to handle everything.
So they don't necessarily have in-house staff and they don't necessarily check the email. That's why you say you need to have someone on the ground that make that initial introduction or facilitate through the journey of identifying and after connecting the vendors to the potential buyers.
Yeah.
You emphasized also earlier that clients have to build their own relationship. Can you develop that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are kind of ambassadors on behalf of the customer in these cases many times. So we introduce our customers to the suppliers. We tell who they are, what is their potential. We kind of work as a guarantee for the supplier that the customer is worth investing efforts on that. They have sales teams to a limited number, limited English skills sometimes, but they don't have anybody to answer all possible emails which are coming. So most of the emails are not read, or if you try to call them, you don't get hold of anybody because the switchboard is already blocking you in the beginning. But we do the introductions. That is the key issue. And what comes to the supply chain relations and all the work what has to be done, we have the great principle that we are a third party. As we are not buying or selling anything except our services, we think that the customer has to develop his own supplier network in Vietnam and to keep it also running all the time. Our role is to help and introduce and make sure that all things go fluently.
Mhm. Okay, that's great to point out about that transparency because many sourcing agencies, they will get commission from factories. So they will be more keen to recommend one factory over another one just because they will get a better cut. But here in this methodology that you are highlighting is also looking at the interest of the client first and then identifying which one is the most potential factory according to different criteria that have to be put on the table initially and then benchmark. Talking about that, talking about how many potential suppliers do you need? Do you need 2, 3, 4 to make a project happen? Or how is usually your long list that you will be putting first on tables? And how do you squeeze that to make sure that, okay, those 5, 10 factories are the most potential one for your clients?
I think it's a good point to also see the difference of what is sourcing and outsourcing. In our philosophy, sourcing is something where the customer is looking for a product. He's not so interested about how many factories there are behind because his final target is to buy one product with the competitive price. And outsourcing is completely different thing. The customers are looking to develop their supply chain for multiple products, which in many cases are not sold forward. They are part of their own production, being components, being some parts of machines and things like that. So the approach already is different. When we do a supplier search for this kind of customer, we start with very long lists, which are then benchmarked with different tools to become lesser and lesser. We have a so-called short list of 10 companies. Those we audit, those we visit also with our customers. So the approach is completely different between sourcing and outsourcing.
Thank you, Pietro. It's good that you are making this distinction because sourcing, you mostly look for products, while outsource manufacturing, you are working to build a relationship with new suppliers. And that relationship, you also expect to make it better and then to make it grow over years. This is not just a one shot.
Yes, exactly. Vietnam is not the place to come for one shot quotations or something like that. They don't work like that. Factories and sales teams here don't work like that, and they distinguish quite quickly. They are looking for long-term business, but I have to say that all our customers who are on outsourced manufacturing are looking to build long-term new supply chains in Vietnam. So they are not here for one single project or something like that.
Pietro, you also introduced us earlier the concept of audits. We go from a long list to a short list of maybe 10 potential suppliers, but why auditing them is so important?
Two reasons, or which are the main reasons. So the first thing is that when we are shortlisting the long list, we use different tools. We check many different things from the factories. Audits is the next step where we also verify that the receipt transfers are correct, that they are corresponding to the reality. But especially we want to have a very good picture of how the factory is operating. It's easy to see when you go into the workshops if everything is in order or things are a little bit here and there. It's easy to see which kind of sales team you have, their competencies, their customers, and the general attitude against the customer also. You have to see it yourself at the factory. You cannot do it on paper only. This guarantees then that in the final end, in the shortlist, we have 8 to 10 companies which all are fulfilling perfectly customers' requirements. Then it's more like the feeling when the customer is meeting them, do I like this factory, do I like these people, and so on. But in the final end, it's always the customer who chooses. We help, but we don't choose.
So RFQ wise, sometime you will also place the RFQ just at the end, right? So you will deploy
That
this
is true.
entire strategy
Yes.
to finally, among the 10 potential ones, there will be 3 selected, and those ones will be the one eligible for RFQ.
Yeah. Depends of the customer also. Sometimes we do an RFQ for everybody who has passed the audits, because the price then is a differentiating factor in many cases. And it's not necessarily only one factory which is selected. You have to remember that we are looking for a supply chain, and that supply chain has to produce various products. So it's not necessarily only one product. And it might be that one factory is good with this thing, the other one is good with another thing. So you can have already 2 or 3 even factories in the beginning in the supply chain. Therefore, the pricing is of course important also, because like said, one of the 3 reasons why customers are coming to Vietnam is the cost effectiveness of Vietnam in general. Not only the labor cost, but the labor cost is reflecting to all costs, transportation and other side costs also in Vietnam.
Can you give us a benchmark about these costs when we consider, for instance, China versus Vietnam? And within Vietnam itself, in different clusters, what might be the differences in terms of costs?
I would say that Vietnamese cost level is based on the minimum wages, which are official wages in Vietnam. And there is 4 levels of that. Of course, the most expensive are the big cities like Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Da Nang, where inside the city there is the highest cost. Then you have the surrounding provinces, which are still tied with these big cities, which is the next level. After that comes what we call the countryside. The difference is already very big. And as the last one is the mountainous regions, which are really not industrialized at all, not even small scale, but mainly agriculture and things like that. And if we think about the salary levels, for entry levels, this minimum wage with extra working hours and things like that is very much used. Then, of course, like in Western countries, when your skills develop, you have been working more, your salary will increase also. A good reference point might be China. If we think about the east coast of eastern parts of China, Vietnamese salary levels are probably 40 to 60% of the Chinese level. But in China, if you go into the western part, Chongqing and there, you start to reach the same salary levels like in Vietnam. So Vietnam is definitely not the cheapest place to produce. You can go to Bangladesh, even Cambodia, to find cheaper salary levels. But the issue is that the cheaper it is, the more complex it becomes to manufacture and to run the show there. And this is the reason when I say that Vietnam is the best bang for the buck. Easiest is to do here at the moment.
Okay, so easiest country in a sense of starting manufacturing, but considering all the work that have been done after, right? Quality management, having a local team that can follow instruction, decent level of English. This is where Vietnam will stand out and that can provide, as you said, the best bang for the buck.
We have to distinguish these things in 2 sections. We have this kind of setting up the scheme, and then you have the operational work on the ground. Both are needed. And finding the supplier is the first step. But after that, there is the ramp up of production and continuous production with quality controls, final inspections, and all these kind of things. That is something where we are involved in both sections, the consulting part and the operational services as well. You need those in general wherever you are producing. You cannot produce, especially if it's high valued parts, you cannot process them without having inline inspections and final inspections as well.
Okay, so inline, so during the production, and then final, when the container will be loaded.
Yes.
Then you have also a last QC check to make sure that, okay, until here, the responsibility of the factories is moved to the shipping line. Then you have a check to make sure that, okay, everything is in order.
Yeah.
Do you do also inspections of the raw materials? Because many of the raw materials in Vietnam will be imported. Is it something that you also strongly recommend to do at this stage? So you make sure that, okay, from A to Z, the process has been checked by a third party.
Yeah, that is one thing also. So all the raw materials typically do have certificates with them. So we check them randomly also when needed and so on. I must point that the quality control in general is very much customized. So it depends very much of the customer also what kind of quality control their company requires. Some are stricter, some are more loose. There are different cases, and there is no written rule in that way how it should be done in Vietnam. It depends of the customer's requirements very much.
Okay, Pietro, something now I would like us to discuss is more about the long-term of Vietnam in sense of supply chain diversification and supply chain development. You have had projects and clients that they started with one small product category, and after that, some of your clients and will move the entire production to Vietnam. Can you discuss about that? And can you tell us a bit how do you see Vietnam and what have been some of the use case that you meet through that everything has been moved here in Vietnam?
There is basically two kind of customers in this. You have brand owners who don't have their own capacity at all. They don't have any manufacturing, no workshops, nothing at all. Everything is done outside. They have one assembly partner who is assembling components and products coming from other factories. That is one case. Then we have companies who year after year have bigger projects. Let's say that the manufacturing process takes 8 to 12 months. Then it's one project, it's finished, the next one is coming. So it's more like project type of manufacturing. Quality controls are diversified also in that respect, that some customers need very extensive final inspections. This is because the materials are not sent to the warehouse or anything. They might be part of a bigger construction plan, for example. So they must arrive in perfect shape, perfect condition, painted, ready to be mounted into the sites where they are used. Then we have customers who are making also consumer packaging here. So the products are directly packed for final use in their countries. Then some products are shipped as they are. If they are very rudimentary products, they can be shipped in boxes simply.
Vietnam is not only a country for one shots. You say it earlier. This is a country that have to be considered for a long-term plan. And then because it takes time also to ramp up something, it takes time to find suppliers, it takes time to vet them, it takes time to ramp up a production. But after this, the current manufacturing landscape is rich enough to also step by step getting more into the tier end sourcing, getting closer to the raw materials, and also build the sub-supplier network that is also resilient and can offer sustainability for your supply chain. That's how you see Vietnam?
That is the case. So most of our customers have been here years already and are developing their supply chain, enlarging it. Some limiting factors can be raw material availabilities, but those are normally coming then from China or surrounding countries, sometimes from Europe even. One of the issues why companies are outsourcing their manufacturing is also to be able to get as much as possible local content into the final product. This is very typical in automotive sector, for example. So the more they can buy locally, plastic, steel, glass, the happier they are basically, and that reflects to the cost. All customers are similar. So developing the raw material supply chains is like the next step of the first project. And that's more longer term production. So finding locally made components instead of components coming from abroad is definitely something which has to be done and is very interesting also for customers.
So now let's say you have in front of you a factory that can be based in the US or in Europe. They have not considered at all outsourced manufacturing. Until now, they rely on their own capacity. So of course, they may have limitation in taking big scale project because they have not done that shift yet. What could be a timeline that could be reasonable for them to start outsourcing some spare parts, some components, and then a more midterm to long-term planning too? They can have a subcontracting network overseas and maybe long-term plan that they can have their own factory overseas.
If it's the first time they're outsourcing in general, there is a lot more of new things for them. Like I said earlier, many of our customers are already outsourcing somewhere and are looking for better cost structure or geopolitical reasons. So moving the supply chains from China to Vietnam, for example. But it doesn't really affect the workload in the matter of fact. I would say that the company has made a strategic decision to start to outsource. Vietnam can be one of them. They might be looking something else as well. In Europe, they might be looking East Europe, in USA, Mexico, and other Latin American countries. Once the decision is made, the process is very similar. Typically, the first orders can be placed after 3 months of the start of the project. I would say that our work takes some 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks in total. And then as a big important part is, of course, the customers' visits to the supply chain providers. That's maybe 4 weeks later when everything is arranged and time schedules are in place. But pretty much after 12 weeks, you should be able to launch your first orders into the process already.
3 months, first PO, maybe 6 months, you have already first iteration on the production ramp up. 12 months, could we imagine that after 12 months, they can have already a sustainable supply chain in place?
Yes, definitely yes, after 12 months. It depends, of course, a little bit what are you producing. So if you are in a project production where you provide or manufacture components for bigger entities, yes, then you start in the beginning and you finish it already after 12. But you have the supply chain already. It's trained already. They know what they need to do. They know the customer. So it's very much running after that.
One thing we have to talk, because moving out part of the production overseas can also bring risk and challenges. What might be from you the main one? IP, supply chain availability, because of the disruption that can happen. Where could be the potential red flag, and then also how to prevent them.
There are many risks involved, of course, like in any production. Risks are everywhere. But if you are outsourcing, for example, in Asia, the risks are the geopolitical stability, for example. That is one thing. Also, the country's internal political stability is important. In Vietnam, we are in that good position that this is a very stable economy and politically stable country also. So it is good to work here. Then you have the logistics issues. We have recently seen the lack of containers, which were delaying shipments, which were at the same time increasing the logistics cost heavily. Those are all things which come and go, so they are not permanent things. Then we have, you could even say, meteorological risks. In question of timing, you might have floodings of the factories which are delaying the production and all these kind of things. I think those are the major risks what you have. There is always the learning curve anyhow. So mistakes cannot be avoided, but you have to catch them and correct That is the key issue. And catching and correcting them equals to quality control, inline inspection already. So that in the end of the manufacturing line, you don't have products which are faulty from some point of view.
How do you tackle the challenge of IP? We had a client coming to Vietnam because they had some IP issues in China. Their number one factory that they've been working with for years that support the product development start to sell to their direct competitor. How do you tackle this challenge?
Well, this is a legal issue also. So first of all, you must have protected your IPs. It's surprisingly many companies who have not protected their products. Then we cannot speak very much about IP copying even if it's not protected. But Vietnam has enforced lately also the IP protection. So it used to be a little bit like Wild West, like China and many other countries here, but we are on the better direction now. The point is that Vietnamese also do not copy so much products because they are not really good salespeople, unfortunately. And they have problems. They can copy product, but to sell it forward in the international market is nearly next to impossible for them in many cases. You can see that, for example, that you don't find many Vietnamese brands in different products. You haven't cars VinFast, but aside of that, not many brands which could be said to be Vietnamese made.
Mm-hmm. You don't have a lot of brands. Does it mean that designing from Vietnam is also difficult?
It means that the design is very often done for the customer only. And it's not full design in many cases. It is more like adjusting a design for certain specific reasons. We have not seen very many design companies in Vietnam, especially if we speak about goods. The other thing is then that there is a lot of design, but that's for 3D movies and pictures and things like that. But for product development, there is not very much design services.
So it means that from a foreign perspective, I want to engage with a factory in Vietnam to do contract manufacturing. Then obviously I have to provide all the drawings, all the CAD files. And when they are this, okay, they can start to work on the first sample, on the first iteration of the product.
Vietnamese factories are very well equipped with 3D drawings, and cost calculation and offering is based of having the 3D drawings from the customer. So in most of the cases, they require the 3D drawings before they make even a quotation for you. Sometimes they like to see samples also, but that's more in the garment type of products. So it depends a little bit of the product, of course, but 3D drawings, yes, you need them.
3D drawings, so you mean they can evaluate the amount of raw materials and from this being able to provide a first draft quotation that can be adjusted later with the final drawings, right?
Yeah, that is the case, and they have the first impression. It's a combination of different things which are needed, and also once they have it in their system, it's easier to move also to the production.
Okay.
But they are cautious about the material consumption and things like that.
Now, a question that happened very often for foreigners that are new to Vietnam, it's about the concept of the target price. Why so many Vietnamese factories will ask for a target price very early to even be open to continue the discussion?
I think the main reason is that they have a pretty good idea of their production capacity and the cost of the production. And they want to avoid spending too much time if there is no way to get the price at what the customer is willing to pay. So they simply want to avoid wasting time by saying that, sorry, we know already that we cannot reach that. This is due to the raw materials, for example, which they are not domestic raw materials. Then they know the cost of the raw materials. They can calculate from those drawings the cost, and they can see straight away if it's compatible with the target price or not. We have to remember also that Vietnam, or let's put it like that, China is the biggest competitor, and it's about 15 times bigger than Vietnam. In China, you have all the raw material supplies, They're buying them in high volume compared to Vietnam. So in one way, they are compensating what they're losing in the labor force cost. They are compensating with the cheaper raw materials. This is a balance which is moving all the time. Once again, there is no exact rule for that. You can see it in products also.
Okay, thank you, Pietro. I think it was very clear and it gave us a pretty good understanding about how to start outsourcing manufacturing outside of our main market, and then with a strong focus on Vietnam, which is today one of the rising stars here in Asia. Thank you, Pietro, for your sharing today. I think it gives to our audience a pretty clear understanding about how they can start leveraging outsourcing manufacturing outside of their main market, specifically Europe or the US, and then choose Vietnam as the first destination to start doing those steps. If you want to learn more about outsourcing in Vietnam, specifically, we have a white paper that we've been doing with Pietro that highlight where to start. So there will be different clusters, different manufacturing zones to consider, which can have a lot of different implications. We touched them earlier today. Cost of the labor, also the accessibility of raw materials, the closeness to also a port to make all the shipping line resilient. So if you're new to Vietnam and you want to learn about this, you'll find more details below in the description. Pietro, one last word?
Yes, I would like to point also one important thing. Vietnam is part of the most of the world's free trade agreements, especially with the Europe and USA. So check the document included also, so you can see that Vietnam is really everywhere.
Okay. Thank you, Pietro, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Down and I'ma get it right. Get on fight right.